Today's episode of the Ramp It Up podcast contains explicit language and may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener's discretion is advised. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Ramp It Up podcast with your host, Ronell Sinuis.
Are you ready to ramp it up?
Ramp it up, ew!
Hey, yo, ramp it up, B.
Girl, ramp it up! Ramp it up!
The Ramp It Up podcast.
Hey, you need to ramp it up.
Ramp it up.
And we are back with another episode of the Ramp It Up podcast. I am your host and your favorite Zoe on Wheels, Ronell Sinus. It is hard to believe we are already in the month of October. The year has come and gone. I don't know what appointments 2023 is late for, but it is going fast. It felt like just yesterday we were putting together our New Year's resolutions and such. Hopefully those have gone well. I've not given much of an update on mine, but we're not going to talk about that. Not talking about that. We are in October. October is celebrated in the wheelchair community, or just the disability community at large, as Disability Employment Awareness Month. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, it is observed each October where they celebrate the contributions of America's workers with disabilities, both past and present, and showcase supportive, inclusive employment policies and practices that benefit employers and employees. Now, this year, their theme is Advancing Access and Equity. Here on the podcast, I invited Leslie St. Louis. Mr. Leslie is the director of the Pathways to Employment at the United Spinal Association. Not only is he a fellow wheelchair user, he's a fellow Haitian American like your boy here. So shout out to all my Haitians who are going to pay attention to this episode. But I asked him to join me to talk about not only his personal experience as a wheelchair user and his journey into employment, but the work he does to help others find employment and keep employment. Now, this is definitely a large issue, a large topic. This is going to be a part one. It's also going to be followed up not only with another conversation in the near future with Leslie, but I also spoke with Joshua Basil back during Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month, and he and I are going to talk again about benefits and when you're trying to get work and things like that. So it's a very complex, a very nuanced conversation. So I figured having several different professionals talk about employment and benefits and income would be important. If you remember previously when I spoke with attorney Jeffrey Mindy about the Ticket to Work program. So you can hear some terms that are going to sound familiar in this conversation with Leslie. So definitely stay tuned. Of course, I have to remind you guys to follow the podcast on our social medias. We are on Instagram as ramp.it.up.podcast. Also on Facebook, just search the Ramp It Up podcast. You can hear us on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, and anywhere else you listen to your favorite podcast. If you're not already doing so, follow and subscribe to the podcast. We put out 2 or more episodes each and every month. When you get those notifications, just know there's a new episode coming up. Also, remember to rate and review the podcast. If you haven't done so yet, please go ahead and do so. We know we're worth 5 stars, but we want to know what you guys think. Also, you can email us if you have any podcast ideas, any guests that you want to interview, or any topics, or if you just want to throw birthday shout-outs or anything, feel free to email us at rampituppodcast@gmail.com. That is rampituppodcast@gmail.com. Before we get into the interview with Leslie, another announcement. I know Josh broke the news in the episode with him, but I will be going to Las Vegas in the next couple of days from October 18th to the 21st for the Strong Willed Together conference put together by the United Spinal Association. They'll be honoring several individuals in the wheelchair community who won the Strong-Willed Together competitions, and they'll also be showcasing some new technology, some new innovations, and just some new information that will definitely affect the wheelchair community as a whole. So I'll be going there to participate as a Tech Access Initiative member and the Tech Talks facilitator. I'm going to make sure to take many pictures. I'm going to try to get some interviews live out there, put some videos for you guys to enjoy. So we've got a lot coming up in the next couple weeks. And then after that, another episode here. So October's going to be busy. Stay tuned. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and jump into the conversation that I had with Director Leslie St. Louis. And on today's episode of the Ramp It Up podcast, I am here with one of my colleagues from the United Spinal Association and fellow Haitian American. Got to throw that out there one time. Leslie St. Louis. I'm not even going to give the St. Louis. St. Louis. You got to say it like that. How you doing, Leslie?
Good. How are you?
We're good here. Sunny Miami, Florida. Can't complain. Although some would say it's too hot. But I'm glad to have you on the podcast today.
No, pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. October is Disability Employment Awareness Month, and with it, we are bringing more awareness to people who are disabled, who are unemployed, and we're trying to bridge that gap to bring employment, and of course, educating those who assume people with disabilities are just home collecting checks and don't need work, and we just like hanging out, playing video games and chilling, which is definitely not the case for the both of us who are fully and gainfully employed. So again, thank you for joining us. Leslie is the director of the Pathways to Employment program at the United Spinal. A little bit about Leslie outside of his amazing heritage, being so like myself. He's grateful to have the opportunity to facilitate people with disabilities obtaining gainful employment and to replace fear and prejudice against people with disabilities with mutual understanding. Having continuously encountered barriers from employers, he sees the common challenges individuals with disabilities have to overcome are not their disabilities, but the stigma surrounding them. He hopes that creating employment opportunities will increase confidence within these individuals and inspire them to conquer more challenges and achieve even higher levels of success. Leslie was born with Spina Bifida, diagnosed with the most severe, called myelomeningocele, and is a wheelchair user. He holds a master's degree from Long Island University and regularly participates in adaptive sports. Through his involvement in adaptive sports and in his professional life, he strives to advocate for individuals with disabilities and restore dignity through productivity. I'm not going to lie to you. I practiced for like 3 days saying myelomeningocele.
No, I was going to say congratulations on that because
I cheated. I used Google to pronounce it for me, and then I just practiced for a little while.
No, that's a tough one to handle, but you nailed it.
Thank you. But yeah, I always, after reading and sharing the bio for my guests, I always like to tell them in your own words, just a little bit, sum that up, and then of course we'll find out who Leslie is.
Yeah, for sure. So, as Renell said, not as active in adaptive sports as I used to be in my youth. I have a 1-year-old, so she's taking a little bit more of my time, which is fine by me. It's a pleasure, an honor to be a dad. But I play wheelchair basketball, wheelchair tennis. I'm gonna not date myself, but date myself about 20 years. Now I'm 37, so I started when I was around 10 years old, and it's been a huge catalyst, bridge between myself and the success that I have today. Being within a population or being a part of a population in a community with similar life experiences and different age groups, different religions, different genders, you really get a wide range of perspective in how people accomplish and overcome some of the challenges that surround, employment, adaptive sports, and just life in general.
Don't worry about dating yourself. I'm also 37, so we're in the same boat.
All right.
I would say my knees hurt, but I don't feel them really, so that's okay. It's all right.
Makes the two of us.
Yeah. And I was also going to say, being dad is technically an extreme sport in itself. So there you go.
Yeah, you got that right.
All right. So now, were you born in Haiti or in the States?
I was born in the States.
Okay, cool. So same here. New York born. I've always joked around. I don't know how Caribbean folk end up in such cold weather, but around the 90s, my parents changed their mind and came down to Miami.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. My parents came around, I want to say 70s.
Oh yeah, no, that's what they moved here in like
Oh, gotcha.
69, but I wasn't born until 86, and then they came down to Florida. So yeah,
Same.
we've been in here for. I joke around my father at this point that you're not Haitian anymore, you're American. Who's officially been here longer than in Haiti. Yeah, he doesn't like hearing that.
Yeah, I stay away from that conversation altogether. Yeah.
All right. So just to get a little bit of background, like tell me about young Leslie St. Louis growing up in the States, living with Spina Bifida.
Yeah, my perspective is, this is the only life I know, right? So I don't know any other physical capacity than the one that I've been born with, right? Of course, age plays a factor, but that's everybody. Disability, not disability. Age is undefeated, and Father Time is undefeated. But apart from that, young Leslie to date Leslie, in up to date Leslie, my perspective is always consistent, or I try to make it consistent as well. As far as when I go into the room, I have to present myself as the most confident person in that room. Not that I'm saying I know better than the rest of the people in the room, but I have something to offer, and I am valuable in that conversation or in that interaction, and take it from there. So I believe that confidence is the first step of success, and not being afraid and using those no's. And we'll go further into that conversation as we talk about into employment, but just in general, taking adaptive sports, for example, I remember where I couldn't reach the basket, as a 10-year-old sitting in a chair, with a regular sized basketball. And then today I'm able to, on occasion, hit a three. On occasion.
I like that little caveat.
Yeah, on occasion, right? I'm not Steph Curry by any means, but that's to show you, you start from in front of the basket and you practice, and then as you get better, you move further and further away from that basket, from that goal, with the same accuracy, because you now know that you put the time in, and you are confident enough that you're going to reach that goal.
Now, again, coming from our similar backgrounds, Haitians are known for resiliency all the way back to 1800s, where we fought back and gained our own independence. How much of our culture would you attribute, and of course probably family and friends, would you attribute to your ability to keep pushing? Because many would have just given up, like, basketball's not the sport for me at 10, since you couldn't do it, but you were able to push forward and, like I said, or like you said now, hit the occasional three where you are currently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, family for me is huge. They're the foundation of everything that I do. My parents are the pillar of that foundation. Without them, my success would not be where it is today. And, coming from two sides of the spectrum, where my dad was like, all right, life is hard. I came here from a different country, barely spoke English, was a doctor in Haiti, had to reapply, had to pass the boards all over again, brand new, while having kids, while driving a taxi. So your situation, you have to figure it out. And then my mom, being a little softer, was like, okay, you'll get it. You'll get there, but take your time. So I had a very strong balance of tough love and affection, which that's a gift, honestly, which I appreciate every single day. And I try to reflect that in my day-to-day. And the sports, my first sport actually was tennis.
Okay.
And the reason why is because father-son type of bonding. My dad's a youth sports fan. So, he wanted to try to figure out how can I interact with my son on a adaptive or on a sports level, and tennis was that answer. And that really, how would I say, not really helped, but it, it created another element of, all right, if Leslie can do this and reach a certain level of success in doing this, then the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of took off, I guess.
I'm glad to hear. That's cool. So now let's talk about education and get even the early years, from grade school all the way through your postgrad years. How was your experience, again, being a young kid at the time as a wheelchair user? And of course, kids aren't always the nicest. They gladly point out how different you are, but the cool thing is there are always those who all can be supportive in those situations.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show, Meet the Future of Healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match you, your disease, with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe, and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, Meet the Future of Healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
Yeah, absolutely. People always ask me, can you speak on as a African American male or a Black male in this country? Not really. The reason why is I don't have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Or, when I go into a room and someone looks at me different or I'm getting a different vibe, two questions pop in my head immediately. Is it the wheelchair or is it because I'm a man of color? So I really don't have an accurate assessment or experience that I can say it was this versus that or that versus this. What I did know is that I have something to prove. Not to them, but to myself.
Okay.
Right? It was never about people. It was always about me and my family. How can I represent myself and how can I represent my family to the highest quality of what they deserve and what I deserve? And I think that helped me kind of block out some of the things that were coming my way. And probably I wouldn't even realize they were coming my way. And to your point, kids are kids. So they're going to be curious by nature and they're not going to have a filter 9 times out of 10. So I was fortunate enough to never have to interact with those type of, bullying or negative vibes or negative interactions when it came to my fellow students or cohorts or teachers or anything like that, because I made it a point where my disability is a part of my life.
Okay.
It's not my life. And I think because I was able to successfully, in my mind, successfully project that, it never really impacted me in that way.
Yeah, that's powerful to say because myself getting injured at 30, it was a very different experience. Like I said, growing up, I definitely had first of all, hey, big black guy walking into a room. So you knew what some of those stares were about. And now it's more of, okay, the wheelchair is what the first thing that they see. So I could definitely point out to situations where I could tell one versus the other. But being able to acknowledge that, look, you accept your disability, but it's not who you are. It may be a part of your daily life of you, but you are Leslie, and it's up to you to define who that is.
Yep.
So Now, in your bio, you reflected about some of the challenges you faced going into the world of employment, but did you face any in, of course, college, or because again, we're talking about early 2000s, and accessibility as far as technology wasn't really there yet. Yeah, thankfully, it wasn't the 90s when Dragon first came out, but we weren't where we are now. So, tell me a bit about that experience.
Yeah, the challenges that I faced were mainly structural challenges to physical buildings, accessibility to the buildings, elevator ramps, snow, all the environmental stuff that comes around in New York around, the wintertime, which we're approaching, so having the ability to access certain physical structures definitely posed a challenge, and understanding where I can perform the whatever task I was trying to perform, to the highest of my ability. Technology had very little to do with my disability. It was just my understanding of technology altogether. I always joke around, if I'm able to access by email, and OneDrive, that's a success for me. So that's not disability related, but what I've seen, as from high school till today, is that if I knew of some of these things or was maybe more interested, I always reflect on why I could do better or what I could have done better. But if I knew of certain technologies or certain processes, maybe it would have facilitated my academic career success more.
So now, how did you overcome some of those structural challenges? Was it something where you just found your workarounds, or were you forced to self-advocate?
Most of the time I found workarounds for it. And so it was in between. So there was workarounds and accommodations that I had to articulate. So for example, in one of the buildings, was an older building, and the elevator was constantly not working. So I missed a lot of class or wasn't able to participate in the discussions. I received the work, but never really was part of the classroom setting for an extended period of time.
Okay.
And I went down to student council, I believe, or for disabilities, and said, listen, I'm paying for this. So why am I not getting the same experience as my cohorts? So why isn't my money's equal, but why is my experience not equal?
Experience not the same, yeah.
Yeah. So how can we figure this out? And they were able to kind of switch the classes, from downstairs, and then move the class from downstairs to upstairs. So basically they swapped the classes. So I was able to continue the rest of the semester with the same experience.
So now, in our conversation that we had back with the United Spinal through Tech Talks, we talked a lot about self-advocating. So that's why I kind of wanted to bridge that into going into the workplace. So again, as we talked about it being October with Disability Awareness Month, at what point did you start to realize that you may start encountering some form of, I don't want to say prejudice, but I'll again say challenges when entering into the workforce?
Oh, 100%. My collegiate years, prior to my collegiate years, I never received too much pushback. Part of it was my perception and how I viewed things on, I have to figure it out. The world's not going to cater to me. I have to just navigate with what I have. Right. I have to, for me, I think life is you play the hand that you're dealt, type of situation, and you try to do your best to win that game or that situation. But it really became more prevalent as I pursued a career. So just like a lot of college students looking for that first opportunity, the only difference is on my resume, there was no indication or direct indication of disability. It was solely about my student aid job at the time.
Okay.
Coming out of college. So when I came into that room, immediately you kind of saw the expressions on their faces, like, oh, like, what do we do now?
Mm-hmm.
And, or, oh man, I wasn't ready for this, and smart recruitment is very risk adverse. So, they wouldn't say, well, we can't interview you and turn away. So they went through the interview, but I knew coming out of that interview that I didn't get that job. And honestly, thinking about it, I didn't want that job. Because if there's a hesitation in hiring me and they decide to go against their gut feeling, what is that relationship going to turn out to be in the future?
And just the environment that'll follow that up as well.
Correct. Exactly. So I was happy that I never got those positions, those opportunities. Now reflecting on it now. But yeah, so for example, I've been to older companies or older building structural companies where they had no elevator. Or the office space was too small. Or it was a group setting and they weren't able to accommodate me in that group setting for whatever reason, right? Variety of reasons. So what I started to do is educate myself on, before I go in an interview, how can I set myself up for success?
Okay.
So what I do is I ask, what is the parking situation? What is the building situation? Are there elevators? Is it on the first floor? What does the bathroom look like? Those type of things. So going in, I'm not surprised. And I know, because part of that commute is all those things. Commute starts from the minute you get up to the minute you leave that building.
Okay. That's
your job. Your job is from there, from the minute you open your eyes to the minute you leave that building. So I had to understand what those steps are and how can I successfully complete those steps.
And it's not like someone trained you to think that way. This is just through your personal experience up to that point.
Correct. What's the saying? Life is the best teacher.
Yes,
right?
It is.
Right. So, So as I go, and it's and thinking about jobs, or employment, it's an investment, right? It's not a paycheck, right? You're investing your time, you're investing your effort, you're investing your family's time, right? To a certain point. So we want to make sure that when you're applying for that job and you're interviewing for that job, you're thinking about, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of it? What is my year goal? What is my 5-year goal? And does this company, does this opportunity, does this job align with my goals? And if the answer is no, maybe you need to reevaluate that situation or that opportunity, right? So long-term goals versus short-term goals. This is something that I always try to keep in mind as well, as far as when I'm evaluating the opportunity.
All right. So now you've had some experience seeing those doors politely closed. And, of course, they want to avoid getting in trouble. And, of course, creating your more successful way of evaluating how to go to interviews. But when did you bridge I'm just working, figuring out my own career, to, you know what, I could start an advocacy and teach others how to be successful, coming from my own experience, and then leading you to working with United Spinal as the director of the Pathways to Employment?
Yeah, great question. So I always knew that I wanted to help people. I had two questions that I had to answer for myself: is who do I help, and how do I help them? And I work with people with disabilities. I work with people who are justice involved, with criminal backgrounds, for example, and getting back to work. So employment was always my niche, or what I gravitated to. And without exaggeration, I was stuck in traffic in Brooklyn, and I was like, you know what? I'm part of a population, a community that is extremely underserved, extremely undervalued. So how can I help the community that I'm a part of? How can I elevate our community, people with disabilities? And employment has done wonders for me, on so many different levels. It has improved my quality of life beyond words.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I'm able to help a person with a disability, no matter what the disability is, it's as if I'm going through that process again, because it gives us a sense of independence. Not a sense, it gives us the reality of independence.
Yeah.
Because, and as I tell companies, this is not a charity. This is not the right thing to do. This makes business sense. Because if you employ us, your employees are often your consumers. And if you want to improve your revenue, you want to be able to your workforce to reflect your consumership. And people with disabilities, as a growing population, we're eventually going to be part of your consumership. So it just makes sense. Business makes business sense. And that's what I want. That's what I try to, the message I try to deliver is that you are valuable to companies.
You said two things that really resonate with me. One, I've said it many times here on the podcast. I've said it during Tech Talks. I don't usually care about me. It's the money. Let's be honest. It's going to come down to the money. I'm not asking for charity. I'm not asking for a handout. But if you want my money, if you want my business, you want me to feel comfortable. You want me to feel welcome at your establishment. And I'm not talking about tokenism or any other charity. The reality is, if you are making, like you just said, employees who look like me feel welcome and look like they really belong in that environment, I'm now, as a consumer, going to feel just as comfortable coming here. And in the end, you're going to get my money. So I don't care if you really like my cause. Just if you want my money, you're going to make the environment reflect that and make me want to continue coming. And then you spoke a bit about how the community is underserved. And so what do you say to skeptics that talk about why is Disability Employment Awareness Month necessary? Or I believe the theme right now for this year is advancing access and equity. There's a lot of pushback that I've seen to diversity and the equity conversations. What do you say to individuals like that who have such a negative viewpoint of, again, diversity and making sure that there's room for us at these tables and making sure they're actually accessible?
Yeah, I think, well, let me rephrase it. So in the NFL, I'm not sure if you watch the NFL. I don't know if you're a Miami fan. If you are, I'm sorry. Sorry?
Patriots.
Oh, you know what? Conversation's over.
I knew you were going to.
You know what?
And we just killed the Giants down here as far as Miami, but we're not going to talk about that too. So.
But, I was thinking, with this whole Taylor Swift thing, right? they were, the NFL has always tried to reach different type of populations, women, younger women, just younger generations in general. And just one person shows up to one football game, and all of a sudden their revenue skyrockets or their views skyrocket.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I use that analogy because if you want to engage certain population, the population is going to, I guess, organically or naturally be attracted to something that they're familiar with, that they're comfortable with. And if you don't have those people at the table, how are you going to attract people who are like-minded? That's one. And then two, if you're always looking for innovation and to be that pioneer and to be that lead person or industry, I believe diversity breeds innovation.
Yeah.
Because it allows you to engage with different perspectives and get different perspectives. And different perspectives naturally gives you a different kind of product. So that's why I think diversity is important, but there's a balance there. So we want to make sure that when I'm speaking to job seekers with disabilities, your disability should not be your lead. Because I've never seen, in my experience, on a job description spina bifida required.
Yeah. We're only looking for spinal cord injuries. That's all.
Yeah. Maybe on a survey here or there.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is a job we're talking about, right? So until we start to see spinal cord injury, spina bifida, cerebral palsy on a job description, that should not be your lead. And that's not my lead. My lead is my education, my work experience, whether it's internship, volunteership, professional experience. Those are my leads, my lead statements.
So now,
okay,
I was going to say we're going to transition more into actual job seeking. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, again, as someone who was injured as an adult, I was 30, I was in my career. I thought, life was taking off at the time. And then, of course, spinal cord injury happens. And the first thing you hear, at least in Florida, is, well, your account can't have this much money. If you make this much money, you're going to lose your benefits. And it gets kind of scary. So your first thought is, I guess I'm just going to stay home and survive off this SSDI check. But what would you say to encourage people living with disabilities in that situation to look for some level of employment, whatever, of course, would work for them and their lifestyle?
Sure. Educate yourself. And that's clear across the board. Part of my goal as director for employment at United Spinal is to provide education and resources. Like that old adage, that old saying says, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach him how to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life.
Lifetime. Yep.
So that's what I want to do. I don't want to give you just a day worth of information. I want you to go into a place, into any organization, whether it's benefits related, job related, to know your rights and to know your value. And when it's going back to work, for people who have not been in the workforce for quite some time, or people who are just looking for their first opportunity, is to educate yourself on some of the back to work programs that are available. So just as an example, there's the Ticket to Work program.
Yeah.
There's the Medicaid or medical buy-in program, right? And these are things when I was going to college or when I graduated college, similar to what you just said, it was pretty much black and white. You go to work, you lose your benefits, end of story. if I knew about some of these programs, or some of these programs were in existence at the time, I would have went into that Social Security office and said, "Listen, I know there's a work ticket to work program. How can I get involved?" That's a very different conversation from saying, "I want to go back to work. What happens to you?" Right? So, and it's a very different conversation when you go into an interview and say, "I want to work here. I love this company," versus, "I want to work here, and this is how I can contribute. This is what I bring to the table." So those are the conversations that we should have. So it's a little bit of a shift, a way of thinking, mentality. I can't think of the word right now, but a shift, right?
I would say this: I was injured in 2016, and then by 2018, I was like, "Look, all I know is working. I've been working since I was like 16. I'm ready to get back to work." I jumped on the vocational rehab bandwagon. I was going through the motions, and I hit a huge snag. I ran into the career counselor who's supposed to be helping me figure out what's my next step. Now, I had worked in hospitality, of course, being South Florida, hotels. So I've done hotel work. I've worked in restaurants. I've did bartending. But I had started a career in radio and in journalism. So I was like, I got my voice. I could still type, using my phone. I could still do research. I could speak. I should be able to get back into the game. So I went in with this mentality and on my paperwork. I was like, this is my goal. This is what I'm looking for. Help me get back into, the journalism media game.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never forget it. This man who'd been working for the state for 20, 30 years looked me dead in my eye and was just like, "Why are you wasting your time with this?" He was like, "Why don't you just get a job at Walmart as a greeter, work 20 hours, and enjoy your benefits?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is what this man just told me. I just told you, I'm trying to get gainful employment. I'm trying to get back into my career. I don't want to suck on the teat of society and just get checks. I want to do what I can to be a tax-paying citizen again, get back in the game. And again, nothing against greeters or those who want that career. But he essentially, in those words, said, screw your dreams. Just get some around-the-way job so you can benefit from society and just keep moving. What do you say to not only the people who think that way and give that kind of advice, but to those of us who hear that advice?
Yeah, I think that you have to surround yourself with people, whether it's family, friends, whomever, with people that are going to push you. My friends, and I tell my friends this all the time, if I'm always patting you on the back, I'm not the good friend.
Yeah.
Right? We have to have a relationship, or I have to surround myself with people that are going to tell me, good job, but you got to do better.
We'll challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's the way I grew up. That's where now how my parents showed me the way, right? They never really talked about it. They just said, all right, we reached this point. Great. We're happy we're in a position today, but what does tomorrow look like?
I'm sorry. You just brought back a flashback of my dad. My dad was never really the good job guy. You'd get an A on a test, like, why didn't you get the plus? There's always room for the next level. Go push it harder. You could have done a little bit better.
Exactly. So we acknowledge our success, but we're not satisfied by it. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. So when people tell you no, those are the individuals that you don't want to separate yourself from, because they can provide some kind of quality, or advantage to your life, or some kind of element that you might be missing. So I'm not saying dismiss those people altogether. What I'm saying is that you may want to push them outside of your inner circle a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
and put yourself in a position where there's like-minded people that's going to have a common interest that you have. And that's going to help you and motivate you to do better. And I know that I try to stay away from cliches as much as possible because I'm not a big fan of them, but your biggest competitor is yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because no one else can tell you what you can and cannot do. Like, for example, I'm a big sports guy, so I always tend to go back there. But there's only one Michael Jordan. My dad always says that. There's always one Michael Jordan. So everybody in the league can practice day in and day out for the rest of their life. And they'll never be as good as Michael Jordan because he has a talent. He's born with it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you work hard enough, you might be 90% there, 85% there. And that might be, and you can improve on that. But don't compare yourself to the next person because you don't know what those circumstances are. You don't know what the challenges, what the successes, what the advantages that they have. But you know what you can control. And that's what I try to do all the time. I say, how can I control my tomorrow, my today, my next week, those type of things.
I was gonna say you went the nice way. I responded to him with some not so Christian words, and I took it as I didn't go crazy, but my aide was there with me, and she was really upset because she knew about my past and the work I've done, and I took that as a challenge to I'm gonna push forward. And there was a lot I did. I immediately changed my counselor. I went to another more supportive counselor who literally helped me get on the path to my podcast right now and working or going into my disability accessibility testing. So finding someone that pushes you and of course acknowledges where you are and understands what challenges you may face. And we talked a bit about the benefits. I'm actually gonna have a follow-up episode with attorney Joshua Basil because he talks about going into benefits and what your limits and income and things like that are. But don't allow someone else to decide what your limits are for yourself. If you feel like physically you can't, I know sometimes we all get sick or UTIs. I share it all the time with the podcast. I might be out of commission for a week. Like you said, you have to be direct with the job. What can you offer them? Be realistic with your whatever limitations you are. I'm not saying, again, you're not looking for a handout. You're doing as much work as the next person. But I think you have to be realistic and understand, hey, I might not be able to do 40 hours a week. I might be able to do 20. I might have to work from home. And I know on the Tech Talks, we talked a bit about accommodations. We don't have enough time to go into that. I'm going to link that video onto the podcast for those who want to check it out later on. But again, I'm a new job seeker. I'm coming to you, director of the Pathways to Employment. Help me figure out what I need to do to get into the workforce. What do I need to do? I haven't worked in 4 or 5 years. So my resume has a gap on it. What should I do?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's very common. So first everyone has as experiences, has transferable skills. Your care team, right? A person I used to work with, he says, when you have a care team, you're the CEO. Right? You coordinate the schedules, you coordinate the pay, you coordinate everything. So it comes down to what you need and how you're going to direct that progress. So those are transferable skills. So there's a bunch of transferable skills that we take for granted because we just do it so naturally. Mm-hmm. So for example, second language. I believe second language, and I'm going to give my mom and my dad, well, my mom particularly, a little credit. I'll never tell this. Maybe I'll show this podcast down the road. But she was, but they were right in that speaking French, they speak French to me, and I respond in English. I never really took the time and the effort to respond back to them in French. Right? Today, I tell my parents, speak French to my daughter. Have her, she's not talking yet. She's only 1. But she should respond back in the respective language that you're speaking to her. Don't be like daddy, in this case, right? But second language is a good example of that because you do it so naturally, you don't consider it a skill.
Yeah.
But it's a very marketable skill. So anything that you do in your personal life, day to day, technology is one of them, right? You use, I don't know, Jag or the screen readers or something like that, right? Put that on your resume. So these may not be skills that you're getting paid for or receiving monetary compensation for, but these are skills. For kids for people, younger folks or people in college, I should say, internships, even though it's not paid, they are skills. So anything that you do, anything achievements, any technology, any second language that you speak or have experience with, put that on your resume. In the most simplistic form, a resume is just a list of what you've accomplished in your life. That's all it is. And then once you're able to jot that down and create that template, then you can pick and choose which you want to market over the other. But don't think that you don't have anything to offer, because that's simply not the truth. And don't think that your first job is going to be your last job, because that's something else too, that some people think, oh, I want to get this job because I need to make money. Okay, that's fine. That's just the reality of life. But don't think that this job is going to be your 5, 10, 15, 20-year job. Right? Because not every investment is a lifetime investment.
Yeah.
So that's why I try to encourage people to reflect on that.
I appreciate that, because that does says a lot, especially for again, people with disabilities. The assumption is I won't be able to get another job, so whatever comes my way is what I have to settle for, and that is not the case at all. And again, I have to say thanks so much, Leslie, for taking time with me. Again, October is Disability Employment Awareness Month, and for those listening, for our listeners, I just want to say there's nothing wrong if you don't feel you're there yet, or if it's not your choice to seek employment or reemployment. That's fine. I think it's about finding where you are and understanding not just your limitations, but what your aspirations are. So it's okay if it's 1 year post-injury or 20 years post-injury when you decide you're able to get back to work. You kind of have to decide that for yourself. But before we go, I'm going to ask you, if anything, what advice will you give to those who are contemplating getting into the workforce or actually actively seeking employment as a person with a disability?
Yeah. First, reach out to me. That's the first thing. Please share my contact information with your folks and people who view the podcast. That's the first thing. Definitely excited. It's an honor and pleasure. Your success is my success. So looking forward to working with a lot of people. Whether you're in the job search or you're getting ready or you're looking for that motivation to get into the job search realm or process, that's why I call it it is a process, right? Nothing happens overnight, right? Or very little things happen overnight. And you want to use the no's as a learning experience. You want to use the non-responsiveness as a learning experience, right? Every step of the way, we figure out a different way to approach things, right? We don't want to use the same methods on and on continuously, right? I think, I don't want to quote it, but I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So if your process is not resulting in your ideal, it's not an ideal result, maybe reevaluate your approach, reevaluate your goals. And your goal today may not be your goal tomorrow. Like, for example, one last experience that I had was growing up. I wanted to help people. The legal realm was the only way that I was exposed to at the time to do that. I had no idea about vocational rehab. My experience with vocational rehab was driving and housing. Driving, housing, finance. That's it. When I graduated college or when approaching college, then I started to discover, oh, wow, these people can actually help me with jobs. So, but I wanted to be a lawyer to take that approach. Took the LSAT. The LSAT told me, not right now, guy. This is not for you. This is not. So and my study habits and my focus and my ability to really commit myself to achieve that was not there, right? And it's still not there, to tell you the truth. So as far as that's concerned, so I was very fortunate to find my career now, because I feel very accomplished where I am, because I'm doing the job that I want to do.
Yeah.
So with that said, don't be afraid to pivot. Remember, this investment is not your lifetime investment, right? That's the most important thing I can tell somebody, is that your first step is not your last step. So, and don't be afraid to pivot, because it's a process, and it's an evolution. And with every evolution, there's growing pains, and with every evolution, there's success. So don't be afraid to keep going.
I gotta say thanks so much, Leslie. Someone told me that people living with disabilities learn how to overcome challenges on a daily basis. And I think, like you said, we come up with these skills and we forget to apply them to other areas in life. So I think that's a great thing we can do, apply it to not only the job seeking process, being able to remain in the job and to move forward. Like you said, it's not necessarily a lifetime investment. It could be just a stepping stone to the next point in your career. I know we wanted to talk a bit about self-advocating and being in the job. That just means we have to have a part 2 at some point. You're always welcome to come back on the podcast. We're going to do it again. October is Disability Employment Awareness Month. I'll share Leslie's contact information in the episode notes and just some stats and stuff about employment and unemployment in the disability community. But again, Leslie St. Louis, I'm going to say it like that from now on. I appreciate you for joining me, man. You have a great day.
No, for sure. And don't forget to check out Renell on the 17th of October.
Yeah, I'll be joining you on the Pathways to Employment. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, and please, folks, for those who are listening, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm super excited to work with you and partner with you, through your evolution.
All right. Thanks a lot, Leslie.
All right. Thank you too.
Thanks for tuning in to the show. Connect with the podcast on social media. Check out our Instagram page at ramp.it.up.podcast or email us at rampituppodcast@gmail.com. Until next time.